Welcome to the Lessons in Life, Love, and Leadership podcast with your hosts, Kelly and Cheryl Henderson. We chat about a variety of topics. Get ready. We're about to go in.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another fresh episode of Lessons in Life, Love, and Leadership. Man, thank you all for all of the comments and the subscribes and the likes that have been going on. I'm going to tell you something. I am really a very, very reserved person. And one thing that I hate doing is putting my business on Front Street. And, so thank you for allowing me to be a little bit vulnerable and a little bit transparent. Again, like I said, I'm a guy that likes to roll in the background. I'm not all about the shine and the lights on and things like that. So I just thank you. So it's get back time.
Oh, really? Get back. Okay.
Yeah, because I didn't know what we were doing our last episode about, but now we get the opportunity to interview the love of my life, the one that is just making all things happen. And I just see her leading in all of these different capacities, amazing organization, Run for Our Life. Shout out to the ladies in pink and doing the things that she and Sandra, her bestie of I don't know how many years, they get together to come together and help to lead ladies into healthy lifestyles through running and walking and fitness and all the things. But that's just a smidgen of the person that is on the other side of this thing. But you all know her as Dr. Cheryl. I know her as Babe and Doc and all the honey, get off of me.
Oh, wait.
All this stuff. So you'll get a chance right now to hear her leadership story and how she just became the amazing person that she is. I'm not going to steal her thunder. I'm just going to allow her to cook. Like they said, now let me cook.
Oh,
and she's going to get to cook. and it's going to be 8 with no crumbs.
Oh, gosh. You are too much.
Yeah. So what you got? Talk to me. What's going on in your world? How you doing?
I'm good. I'm interesting. I do enjoy talking. I'm the extrovert-ish of this relationship, but I'm a little antsy about, tonight because I like scripting and practice. So this is off the cuff. So I'm excited to see what happens though too.
Oh, so I can ask anything I want?
No, you have questions that'll be given.
We're gonna tell it all. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you'll tell it all. I won't.
Well, you know what the listeners don't know is this is not who I always was. I actually was extremely timid, but I got pushed out, and once I got out, I'm out now. We out.
Okay.
So.
All right. So tell me a little bit about your leadership story.
Well,
how did it start for you?
Similar to you, I think my leadership skills were being honed while I was in church. I'm a PK and a granddaughter of a pastor, and we spend a lot of time in church. And I think that's kind of where I begrudgingly got pushed into stepping out because I was very timid. And part of it was, insecurity that I felt. But my mom was relentless about pushing me out there to sing. And then ended up being in front of choirs, singing by myself, and then directing choirs. Yeah. And so I think that was like my intro into leadership. And then in elementary school, just as a result of some situations that happened, we'll talk about another time, sure. I was forced into leadership. And it wasn't necessarily great leadership. It was like I stepped up for some injustices that were happening in elementary school. Yeah. And ended up becoming a leader. And it's interesting, too, when I got to middle school, I think that's really when my leadership was like endorsed by my middle school choir director, Pamela Williams, whom I adore. And I just emerged as a leader because nobody else was. And she wrote in my 8th grade memory book, yearbook, I have it. It's in the attic at somebody's house, and it says, "You're going to be a phenomenal music teacher." Wow. And I was like, I'm in the 8th grade. I had no idea my hair was bad. I'm like, what in the world? But I emerged as a leader, and like, short story, she ended up getting sick and we had a sub in choir, and I was infuriated because I felt like our time was being wasted. We were being worksheeted to death. And we went to go see Miss Williams in the hospital, and I was irritated. We took her a gift. I collected money, and we caught the MATA bus to get to the hospital. And when I got there, I was like, how are you? And then I was like, we got this sub. She's not teaching us anything. And she said, well, you teach them.
This is the 8th grade?
8th grade.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, okay. So guess what I did? I went back to choir. I knew how to play piano. I knew how to play the parts. I did teach them. And when she came back, she was like, oh my goodness, we're not going to be able to be a part of All West. Y'all been out. And they were like, no, we ready, Miss Williams. And she was like, what? And they were like, Cheryl taught us. So she was like, that is it. And I guess in that moment, she recognized that there was some leadership in me. And then the rest of it is wild. I got into my career as a music teacher, ended up becoming the department chair of all the arts teachers. They had been teaching way longer than me, and I was like fresh off the boat, out of class. And they were like, okay, you're leading. I think in undergraduate school, I was the president of the choir, ended up being the queen of the school. That's a whole nother story. So I just kept falling into these leadership roles. And then, of course, moved into leading at another elementary school as a music teacher. Then I became an assistant principal, and it was another leader that saw leadership in me and was like, hey, do you want to go to this assistant principal's training? And I was like, okay, sure. So I had a semi-yes in my pocket. And I just kept emerging as a leader, even just being in place, doing my best with what I was given. Somebody was like, hey, do you want to lead? And I kept saying yes, even in my insecurity and my uncertainty. And then I was like, okay, now you're a dean, and then you're an assistant principal. And it was just wild, this journey. And now I find myself leading at my church and leading small groups, and now leading Run for Our Life, which I'm like, how did I end up being an executive director from being a teacher? But I feel like as a teacher, I was always leading my classroom. And then as a musician, I was leading a choir or an orchestra or a large group. So leadership was happening every turn of my life. And so it was just interesting that I think leadership, but the common denominator is someone else saw leadership in me and then pushed me forward.
Right. Well, that's what happens. You know, a lot of times, even in what I say, in the absence of leadership, a leader will emerge.
Right.
Right. So you were in the class. It was an absence of leadership. The leader emerged.
It's true. I did. Right.
And man, look, and that sounds like a movie almost. You know, like we need to be able to take it and make it a movie. Teacher goes in the hospital. Y'all go to a national competition and win with Whoopi Goldberg.
Oh, so, Lord, right? We're in Sister Act. Okay. Oh, goodness.
Well, you know, with all of the leadership that you have been a part of, I know there have been some bumps in the road. What's been your biggest obstacle as a leader?
Wow. Okay. Wow. I want to say the biggest obstacle that I had as a leader was probably in undergraduate school. I was the president of, it's two, but I'm going to use that one. I was the president of the choir.
Okay.
And I was like, pretty much a rule follower. I knew, I was like, we need to be here on time. We need to wear this. We need to show up this way. And as I was leading in undergraduate school, my professor, who was obviously over the organization, pulled me aside after noticing me being very direct and devoid of thoughtful giving of feedback when people were not aligning with the rules or the expectations. And she pulled me aside and she says, you are a phenomenal leader. So she led with kindness. And then she says, either you're going to lead people well in the right direction or you're going to lead people right to hell. And I was like, whoa.
Oh, wow.
I was like, oh, shoot, okay. And so, and in that season, the obstacle, I know, that's a direct quote.
Man.
Either going to lead well or to hell. And I was like, wow. But what that surfaced for me was like, you are a leader and people are following not just what you're saying, but how you live your life. And it was like a gut punch that I needed, because as a leader, I was, of course, aligning in all these areas, but my leadership was not just in this domain. Everywhere I went, I was a leader.
Right.
So I couldn't put on my leadership outfit in this domain, and then over here I'm doing whatever, or I'm saying whatever. And so she called me out, and she's been my mentor since I was 18. So it's wonderful now for her to see me now at 50 and be like, girl, those seeds, thank you, Lord, that they were planted and grew.
Right.
But I'm so grateful for that conversation, because that was some honest Black coffee feedback that I needed.
Love it.
And then I began to start asking for feedback instead of waiting for me to either misstep or for my, desire to lead not necessarily matching the fact that everywhere I went, I was a leader. And so from that, that obstacle, it just, number one, it made me make a decision to be a leader that walked the walk and talked the talk. So that meant, and that leadership was not just in a domain or a scenario or a situation, but every time I show up, I'm a leader.
And you take it even to another level. Instead of walking the walk and talking the talk, you walk the talk.
I do. Yeah. So.
And leading that way. Man, that is phenomenal. Yeah.
It didn't feel phenomenal, but now I see it.
Wow. Yeah, that was, it was almost the same scenario, when I got cursed out in the interview.
Yeah.
Thank God for Miss Doc.
Yes, Miss Doc. Love her.
All right. So when we talk about leaders and leadership, there are philosophers. Who is a thought leader or something that happens in your life that really shaped your approach to the way that you are now? And, and I know you haven't given all the stories. I know a few of them, but, tell me one, or this book or this person that has helped to shape it, I guess, overall.
Okay. Oh, wow. I've had so many phenomenal leaders that I've been, blessed to learn from and grow with. But I think I'm going to start with like a person that I can reach out and touch. Her name is Sun Young Ham. I hope she listens to this episode.
Okay.
But she was one of the leaders in this leadership training program that first I was a participant, and then I became a faculty fellow that got to work alongside her to coach and develop assistant principals. Right. And as I watched her over those 5.5 years, number one, she lived as a leader of integrity. And Sun Young, she methodically prepared every time she showed up for any session she was leading or training. And even when we were at dinner, she was thoughtful and authentic. So she was the same everywhere. So I learned that she was able to be authentic, her authentic self. And then she was able to be thoughtful and planned methodically before she spoke or led anything. And I just loved and admired that in her. And I gleaned that from her. I was like, I will not show up ill-prepared. And she also would do the work that she expected us to do as leaders of other leaders before we did it. And she just modeled I'm not going to ask you to do work that I'm not willing to do. If it was reading a book, she had already read the whole book before we were given the book. It's just that she was just relentless in being prepared and being an example. And then she modeled vulnerability by telling her story to a room full of leaders. And the way in that moment, I will never forget that day. I watched her and I was like, man, I want to be able to be a leader that in the moment where transparency is needed for transformation, that I don't shy away from it. She modeled that, and that transformed me. And so now as I lead, thinking about even last night with Run for Our Life, I took a moment because I felt like transparency is going to lead to a moment of transformation. I seized that moment. And so Sun Young has shaped how I think about my leadership as well as how I show up often as a leader.
Well, to your credit, I get to see it up close and personal, and you do all of the things, whether it's doing an all-nighter or a session that just is, and you wake up exhausted the next day, but you still stand and deliver and give just like it was been 2 weeks fresh. Man, I am so appreciative of those things just leaning into you because you just really do it well. So just thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, a book that I love, though, Miss Doc, I thank you for putting this in my soul, is actually Thanks for the Feedback by Douglas Stone and Sheila Heen. If you haven't read it, you need it. So I go back and revisit this same. You see all these notes.
Yep.
And this is a book that shaped me because Miss Doc gave me some feedback because I was on the wrong side of my eyeballs. And what I love in this book, it talks about how I see me and then how others see me. And so not to go real deep, but on the column that says how I see me, it says as a leader, sometimes we can see ourselves as shy, but somebody else sees us as aloof. Or I can see myself as upbeat and somebody else perceives me as phony. Or I might see myself as spontaneous, but someone else interprets that as being flaky. And the truth of the matter is we can't control the lens of others, but through vulnerability, clear communication, and then building trust, and then asking for feedback, then we're able to determine what's that, perspective or perception that people are receiving, because it gets in the way of taking care of whatever the business is of the organization. And so it talks about honest mirrors versus supportive mirrors. Like honest mirrors are going to tell you the truth. That's what Ms. Doc told me. Your leadership is great, but you need to align your life so that people really follow you. And then leadership is not a piece of clothing that you put on. It's who you are. And so I was like, so she gave me an honest mirror.
Yeah.
And then the supportive mirror are those people that, again, are placed in our lives to encourage us. So thanks for the feedback. I highly recommend it because it's not just asking people, how am I doing? It's really surrounding yourself with people, number one, that you trust and that you allow to speak into your life, and then actually asking for it. And then here's the next step. You pick up the mirror and ask yourself, where am I? What's really happening? So
yeah, that's that tough work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So thanks for the feedback.
Yep. People don't like that.
It's true. Yeah, it's hard to pick up the mirror. It's easier to pick up the magnifying glass.
So I guess when you're thinking about that and that leadership lens and that leadership mirror, what's some advice that you would give to a current leader? So if you could pull somebody to the side and say, hey, bruh, hey, sis, look at this. What would you do?
I think the best advice I would give right now is to ask them, especially a current leader, to check your circle. I think sometimes as leaders, we're so used to being at the top that we don't align ourselves with people that are probably sharper than us or stronger than us or in a different sector that may be leading, because there's just something about surrounding yourselves with a circle that sharpens you. And often when you're at the top, you're thinking about, you're in the work, you're doing the work, doing the work, versus you're working on you. That sometimes that gets put on the back burner. So to a current leader that's been in it a while, check your circle. Make sure there are people around you that you trust, that sharpen you, and that you're still working on yourself as a leader. We never arrive. Pastor Dan would say we're never full grown. So just make sure you check your circle to make sure you got people sharpening you.
It's almost like in the Fresh Start book, who are you running with?
Right, exactly. That's right. Leadership, there we go, leading in life.
Yeah. And, it also talks about, and I don't want to misquote it, but the person that says that you are the sum total of the people that you are hanging around.
That's right.
So, you can either be dragged down or you can be elevated and lifted up to the next heights based off of the people who you surround yourself with.
Right.
So super good, man. Great information. So if there's somebody that's coming up, a budding or aspiring leader, what kind of advice would you give to somebody who wants to be in a position of leadership? Read.
Read.
Okay.
Keep yourself sharp. Find out, if it's an organization you're aspiring to lead in, work first. Get in there and work. Learn it. learn it, and serve. Here's something that in my church back in Miami, they would always say before pastors were ordained, that they would start calling them a pastor because they started acting like a pastor. Before they got the title, they did the work of a pastor. They were leading. And so if you're aspiring to be a leader, serve, read, grow. Serve, read, grow. And then you may be elevated early, or you may be continuing to build yourself up, but make sure, number one, you come read, because you need to have as much knowledge as you can. You won't know everything, but come with something to offer. Serve in the capacity of the organization where you are, and then just be committed to continuing to grow.
Well, what about those people, and that's really good, but what about those people who think they full grown, or they come to the table, Mr. and Mrs. Know-it-all, or Mr. and Mrs. It?
That's hard.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing that happens. What comes up often comes down. So if you come in there feeling like you're at the top, then you've hit a ceiling that you've created for yourself. So there will be a humbling process, right? The Bible says if we elevate ourselves, we're going to be humbled. If we humble ourselves, we'll be lifted. And so I say don't come to the table knowing it all. Come as a learner. Be curious. Ask questions, And it's nothing wrong with being confident about what you know. I'm not saying, this false sense of humility.
Yeah.
But I am saying, be teachable. Come to the table teachable. And another thing, here's the other thing. Often, we are put in positions in God's timing. Some people are elevated, strategically. And if our desire is to be a leader, it's a huge mantle to carry. So make sure you're ready for it, and do your work. Again, back to it. Serve, read, grow. Wow. It doesn't matter how much you already know. There's always someone that knows more. And then think about it. If you're a leader that knows it all, then you don't need a team. And if you don't need a team, then I want to see you carry the weight of an organization on your own. It's not going to work.
That reminds me of that verse Paul says, not that I've already arrived. I can't remember verbatim.
Press forward.
Yeah, press towards the mark.
Right, yeah. But there's a mindset that there's humility behind that.
Yep.
And Paul had the right to say all kinds of things of what he experienced. He was extremely intelligent. He could have said, I know all of this. I've been through it all. I've been flogged. I've been in prison. I wrote half of the New Testament. I could say whatever. But even he took a place of humility, and he's a leader that we follow and listen to.
Right.
Because he was humble.
Right.
So maybe that's the lesson. You're aspiring, be humble.
Ooh, okay. Yeah.
Maybe that's the lesson. Humility, lead with humility.
Wow.
Yeah. Cool.
All right. Well, good, man. Well, thank you for your story. You have really given some great nuggets. And just as we continue to just think about this journey in leadership and life and love, that we just take all of these nuggets that we have.
Yeah.
So, man, thank you for being so transparent. And really thank you for doing the thing that you pushed me to do.
Yeah.
So you modeled the way.
Okay.
You gave the example and all of the different nuggets that you have. And I definitely appreciate it.
Thank you for asking me these questions and giving me the chance to reflect. It means a lot.
And only I can say this. I love you.
I love you too. Why did that make me blush?
All right, guys, y'all take care. Remember to like, subscribe, share, push this out to anybody that you know, and just let them know that we are on the air. We definitely appreciate you guys. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.